Welcome back. Thank you for hanging out with us. Once again, this is the one and only IT in the D Show. I'm your host, Bob Waltenspiel. Co-host, producer extraordinaire Randy Walker is out sick. Guest this week, Steve Panovski from UBX Cloud. We're going to have some fun conversations. He goes back to the days when I started in this business, talking about all the fun things like desktop as a service. He has a thing, and we're going to make fun of him about it, but that's all right. He says he makes backups cool, and I don't believe him. So we'll mock him a little bit, but we're going to talk a little industry, little old stuff, and what's coming, what's next in the IT landscape. Should be a fun conversation. Find us online, itandthed.com. Do us a favor. Give us a like on the social. Subscribe to us everywhere fine podcasts are sold. 2 out of 2 now. We got rained out at Nancy Whiskey downtown for our meetups. Check us out, meetup.com/itandthed. We got one more at Nancy's, and I think we're going to head back to Urban Rest as soon as it gets a little bit colder. But hopefully we'll be on the patio. Check us out, meetup.com/itandthed. Freaking love that bar. It's one of the top 3 bars. I finally settled it now. After hanging out at Nemo's a couple times. I haven't been there in ages. And Nemo's, Nancy Whiskey's, Two-Way. That's like the trifecta of Detroit legendary bars. Love them. Steve, how they treating you, man?
Pretty well. I was actually just thinking about what you just mentioned about the drinking, because it's been 11 years for me, and I'm kind of wanting to start back up based on the kind of work that I've been doing.
So I definitely don't want you to do that, and congrats.
No, on a social aspect, just social drinking.
Got it. No, we our tagline when we originally started this IT in the D was networking Detroit one beer at a time. So it's almost and I usually take breaks every year. So people see me at these events and I'm like, drink, I gotta drink the tonic and lime, you know what I mean? So otherwise I'll get crapped on. I'm looking at your origin, man. I think you got me beat by 1 year that you started.
Oh, okay.
It was UBX Cloud, but Cloud wasn't a word then. What was your original name?
UBX Technology Solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
UBIX.
So
that's still our legal name, actually.
Oh, no kidding. So that's one of the jokes. We had an internal talk today about AI, Gen AI. Mm-hmm. And after the Gen AI jokes got old, we started talking about please stop calling it Gen AI. And the whole point is, like, I remember when cloud was shared hosting, or if it was a virtual private server, and then became this thing cloud, and everybody, went a little nuts. And granted, Gen AI is newer, hasn't been around long, but it was, technically machine learning with some generative aspects. But I'm like, please don't just say, hey, we got Gen AI and see what happens. Like, we, need to talk about business use cases, or this thing doesn't work, what did you guys start, or what was the need that you were trying to fill? Or were you like, these guys are doing it bad, I want to do it better? What was the spark that got off the ground?
It was a passion. I mean, like, before it was a business, it was a hobby, right? So I spent the majority of my childhood with one of my childhood friends, and we would meet up and talk all about computers on Friday at church. We had a event at church on the weekends, and we would get our hands on whatever, like technical manuals, MS-DOS books. I mean, anything we can get our hands on, we would just talk about it all the time and trade whatever we could. And we developed a passion. I mean, I was the first one to get my Packard Bell, and it was like the most unreliable computer on the planet. It was a 486 SX. I actually still have it. It's in my home office. It's pretty old. But that's where it all started. I mean, that's where the passion happened. We would spend the majority of my time, me and my childhood friend Igor, and we would just poke at it and just figure out how it worked.
I started on a C64.
Whoa!
And
okay.
All my other friends got Apple II. I think it was 2Es or 2Cs, the green screen apples. And it's funny how that was what, 37 years ago, and we're still arguing Apple versus Android, and it's been going on literally my entire life. But yeah, I got my first IBM clone. I remember my dad didn't want to shell out for the 56K modem, so I think I got a 14.4 on the dial-up. My first one was 300 baud.
I was going to say, if it was an Amiga or Commodore back in the day, I don't think it was more than like 9600.
Yeah, no, this was a little bit later, when I think AOL just started, and I got the 14.4. Randy, you have no idea. It was absolute hell on a 300 baud modem. I talk about it all the time, reading ASCII text. I should send you a YouTube video of booting up a BBS in Commodore. You would hate your life. So now starting a long time ago, and in old technologies, how do you determine what drives you to push new technologies as offerings? Are your customers asking? Are you trying to be visionaries? Are you seeing stuff? I guess, how do you go through that process?
100% was originally the customer. Yeah, so I actually served coffee at Romeo Computer Company. That was like my first real job in the industry. They had a coffee shop, and they did computer repair, and they sold ISP accounts. It was quite the trifecta, which you just mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love coffee, I love computers, and I love repairing hardware. So it was like the coolest job. And everyone there was named Steve, so I just fit right in. There was like five Steves, and I was pretty young. I was in my teens, and I got a little taste of everything. Like the ISP stuff really fascinated me. I got my tour of Big Net's data center through my mom was my mom worked at a restaurant, and one of the customers worked at Big Net, and he's like, "Hey, let me take your son to the data center. Let me show him because he likes computers, right?" And I walked in there, and I was like, "I want to be in this for the rest of my
I
life."
remember those
Like,
TV commercials. They blew my mind. DSL is like 19.95 a month, and it was like BigNet.net. My
yep,
cousin
leader one, 1-800 leader one. That
was
was
it. Was that the
was the
number?
sign.
Oh my
Yeah.
god!
Yeah. I know that just shows our age too a little bit, but that was like the heyday, right? Like no one had internet, and if they did,
Well,
it was
everyone was sick of their mothers lifting their phones up while they were on a BBS and then it hanging up on you. You know,
it's 100% correct.
yeah. So now
100%
you got
correct.
the dedicated line, like no more. I remember my cousin's phone would always be busy. We're like, will you go on your stupid computer at night or in the morning, just like so you could answer your damn phone. Um, but yeah,
Well,
no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
BBSs were like the start of it too. Like that was like a huge thing. There were so many people that I met on bulletin board systems in Macomb, Oakland, pretty much everyone in those two counties. I'd spend like the majority of my time online on those bulletin board systems, playing door games, sending files, just kind of getting a feel for all the talent and all the cool stuff out there. And it's just funny to realize that, like, when you connect with people, it's like, hey, like, you're just as old as I am. Did you ever like be on BBSs? And like they're real people that you connect with, like,
Hmm.
in the future. It's crazy.
It was my buddy downloaded a script kiddie for get free codes for
Oh, yeah, okay.
AT&T employees when they were at
Yeah.
payphones. So we used it to call 248 BBSs because we were in the 586. And oh yeah, I got in trouble. Yeah, everything went in the garbage. I had to basically cry for 6 months, beg and plead, get all my gear back. Swear I wouldn't do it anymore.
You're like zero cool from hackers, right? Like, you got busted.
No, Randy's hates this story because I use it all the time. But my favorite thing was on the old Commodore Pets. Used to run stop. Did I talk about this with Caston last week, Randy? I'd hate if I double up on this story.
Nothing wrong with Commodore Pets. Come on, man.
No. But
That's
if you jammed
a tape.
control run stop like 3 times, it would open up the code in whatever cassette you were running. So we would change all the words to potty words and then resave it. And then like teachers would be like, "How did this? How did you do it? Change it back." And we're snickering little 11-year-old kids. Love those days. Yeah, it was so much simpler back then.
It really was, but now some of the stuff that, like, I did back then is like considered like interstate wire fraud now, and like all these like other like federal
Right,
crimes.
right, exactly. So one of the things that intrigued me about like your product offerings, I saw like insider protection.
Yeah,
And I talked last week with Cass and Thomas. We were talking about identity protection and everything, but I never really heard anybody phrase it as insider protection. I heard of data protection. I've heard of different, but not that phrase. So I'm just curious to get your take on like what exactly is insider protection and why are you doing it?
sure, absolutely. Again, this kind of goes back to like the customers driving our direction. So I never really, coming from the infrastructure and the hosting space, right, quote unquote, before it was cloud and before it was cool. I didn't want to get into the cyber aspect of any of this. It was kind of like kicking and screaming all the way there. And part of the services that we provide is that we at UBX we kind of help managed service providers productize cloud services, and as a result of that, we kind of need to become experts and very specialized in these systems. And With that came the very first Kaseya breach, the incident, and I was the guy on Reddit like saying like, "Oh my God, like." all these endpoints are getting encrypted. Like, is this happening? And is this real? Like what I'm seeing right now? Because it was the first time that a threat actor was using a managed service provider tool as a proxy to get to their clients. So after that event, we became like internet famous, and it was pretty intense. It was pretty crazy. It was like 2016, I think. And then our customers just demanded that, well, we're experts in cloud. We have to be experts in cyber now. And they kind of pushed us into that area. And insider protection is just kind of a natural evolution of one of the cybersecurity integrations that we've included in our products, like desktop as a service, because the landscape is changing, right? Like our profession is becoming a battleground, and unfortunately, we have to kind of arm ourselves with these tools. And I'm seeing crazy stuff like I'm seeing information gangs, setting up employees to get hired in certain companies to exfiltrate data and then sell that data to the previous employee. So they're on the salary of like two different companies' payrolls, and they're just sending data back.
How do you see how do you
Yeah.
prevent that though? Because like when you hire someone, you pretty much give them the keys,
hmm
especially if you're giving them an administrator account or access to, it depends on how high they are in the scale. How do you prevent that? That's a lot.
Yeah, I was along the same fence, but when I was starting to see what was happening to some of these larger companies, and we were getting called in, because usually we get called in for like remediation. So we're like I like to say, like we're like the groundskeeper Willie of like Springfield, like after, like in the middle of the cyber incident, like they'll call us in to like mop the blood off the floor and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
move the systems somewhere else, or set them up in our cloud. And the we're starting to get pulled into some of these other cases, and I'm like, what the heck? This is crazy. Like some of the it's something out of a novel, right? Like, so they're usually even entry level workers, and they'll get either paid in like Bitcoin, or they'll get a good sum of money to like and they'll kind of do this like KGB spy thing where they're like, okay, you just get us like this one file or this one look in this location, right? And send us the data, and that's like your dead drop at like 4 in the morning, right? Like you just send them over the files or send them over the information, and they're getting paid pretty handsome amounts for this stuff. And from building up false profiles for people to get hired in a competitor's HR department, to just outright, stealing as much intellectual property as possible and just getting a plane to China and landing, and just never going back to the U.S. again. So the insider protection aspect was something that I was rather new to me. I didn't even know that was like a category or like a thing in cyber. Most of the stuff that we dealt with was perimeter protection, proper backups, proper DR, proper architecture, and all of a sudden, we're getting into the EDR space, and we're logging everything, and we're dumping everything into a seam, and we got all this all this packet inspection, lateral movement stuff. And now we're like looking at human behavior, right? Not just systems and technology, but like what makes an employee a risk inside of your company. And yeah, it's just frightening. But so I evaluated a couple of pieces of software out there, and they were all there's only like three really like key predominant ones in this area, and none of them really played well with our desktop as a service, right? With our Citrix, we call them cloud workspaces, but they're very resource intense. They require a lot of infrastructure just to get the desktops and the sessions recording, and kind of like a cybersecurity seam. They're like ingesting all the behavior that people are doing on those systems, and then they're running that user behavior analytics. They're storing all the metadata, all the keywords, all the websites they're going to, all the applications they're going to, and it kind of establishes like what is a cadence of what normal behavior is for them. And then they associate a risk score with the employee based on their activities. So I use my Susie Bad Girl analogy. Susie Bad Girl's always always causing trouble, but Susie Bad Girl in accounting is all of a sudden she's logging in after hours, and she's accessing applications that she's never accessed before or rarely accessed, and her risk score starts increasing, and there are security analysts. There's, I've even seen this get kind of handed either over to IT or over to the security teams, or even in some larger companies, they have dedicated risk managers and risk teams that review this stuff. And they're looking at this and they're saying, okay, Susie Bad Girl is a risk, right? Let's review the sessions. And the software is like uh, the software is actually from Ekron Systems, is the one that we're using. And I like to say that it's just like a closed circuit television for user behavior. Like, it's just recording everything. And we kind of fixed a lot of problems that they were having in their platform. One of the things was the enormous storage and infrastructure requirement to run it. We've helped like optimize that, because that was like one of the issues, is that, like, the wide scale deployment of these solutions are really heavy, and no one likes getting beat with the cloud stick, from their provider, and having to pay. If the solution costs $100,000, that's great, but if to run it costs $300,000 a year, then that's kind of a problem. And that's where we kind of found that sweet spot, is that we found a solution that worked well for our clients' needs, and that we were able to kind of optimize for that delivery
So
platform.
I worked for a behavior analytics sim provider back in 17-ish, 17,
Oh
18.
wow.
So yeah, that hits home. I used to, instead of Susie, was it Susie Rottencrotch? I used to always use the
Susie Rotten Crotch.
whatever.
It's Susie Bad Girl.
It's Susie
Susie Bad
Bagel,
Girl.
sorry. I always used the Snowden,
Hmm.
what he did.
Yeah.
And basically it was, yeah, he badged in at 5 a.m. to a building he's never been to, logged into a computer he's never had access to, switched over to his service account that so it's basically, if you look at it from the old school log files, it was 1+1+1+1. But if you do all four of those together, it rings the bell, and it's 100. So yeah, that whole space is super intriguing to me. We're doing some projects now with QA at auto floors, where it's like, if they manufacture like a washer, for example, it just runs it through, and it baselines the normal, looks for the weird. They're doing it now with lung cancer, where they're baselining normal, looking for weird, and it's millions and millions and millions of documents that they're looking for abnormalities. The technology, it's amazing how far the technology's come from, even back then. It's funny, you were talking about desktop as a service, and I felt UEBA at the time. Everyone would take a meeting with me, but nobody was buying.
Right.
Because it's kind of like Gen AI now. You say Gen AI, they'll take a meeting, but they're not buying. They might eventually, but like desktop as a service, I remember that was like the new hotness in 2001.
Yeah.
And you go talk, a couple people were like adopting it, but they still wanted to give their users freedom, so they would just put it as an icon on their actual desktop, instead of what the purpose is supposed to be, to lock everybody down. And they didn't want to do that. That was pre cell phone, that was pre iPad, so you had to let them play Minesweeper on lunch break. You know what I mean? So nobody was ready for it. I still think that never got as adopted as it should have. I think for retail, like if you're an enterprise rent a car, it was a no brainer. But I still don't. I used to love that concept, and I thought it never took off the way it should have.
I I just like you mentioned, like you were trying to sell it and work on it in 2001, and we started a business trying to do that in 2008. Like, no one was ready for it, and the ones that were great, but it was very a niche product, and we had the same, like, I don't know, like 25 customers for like 6 years, right? Because it was so niche, and our first customer was the one that kind of propelled us into that, because they're like, hey, like, I don't want my guys to be driving in from like Ohio and northern Michigan and having to come in into the parking lot and, like, print drawings and do all this stuff. Can't you just make it so we can connect remotely? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Like, why not?
Right.
And same thing with, like, they're like, hey, we got like 2 cabinets full of Dell servers. Like, don't you guys have like co-location? They can like put the stuff in data room. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So we
Right.
just,
Right.
but like it was all like, it all just followed that path. And we have some really phenomenal customers. We've had the same customers for like almost 15 plus years. So it's been great to like kind of grow with them and evolve with them. And kind of get into these areas, right? Like, I never thought I'd be like, doing these user behavior things and putting cameras on everyone's endpoints and virtual desktops and everything else and servers, and like booby trapping, putting like barbed wire around like critical systems. But I'm doing it now because Ivan Ransomware over there is making a crap ton of money flipping businesses.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at it now, like who would have thought with us coming up in the business together, who would have thought that Microsoft it would actually be considered a viable player in the security stack? It blows my mind. And I'll never forget when I had like a pretty prominent CISO say, "Oh yeah, Defender's as good as anything in the market right now." I'm like, since when? It used to be the most laughable product, and it still blows my mind that they're part of that conversation.
I don't know, man. Microsoft is like kind of trusting a bookstore to your servers, right? It's kind of like the same thing. They're a software vendor. They're there to sell software, and I, some of the stuff like with the Hafnium exchange breaches a few days ago or a few years ago, like 2 years ago, and just some of the stuff that's happening with them is just kind of terrifying. Like everyone's like cool with like 2-day Azure outages, and oh, this region is having a problem, and it's not really a systems or a software issue. It's actually because they were like DDoSed off the planet, right, by like some hacker group. And it's like, come on, man, like Microsoft, like you guys have like more money than God, like fix this problem, like take this seriously. And good thing though, Defender's gotten better.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, it's funny the conversations we're having now that customers want to go multi-cloud,
mhm.
not because of to optimize workloads, which you would think, but for redundancy. Because if one goes down, they want to use the other cloud as a failover. And to me, again, the way it's architected, this shouldn't happen, but it's a thing.
Yeah, and being a private cloud provider, that's like the primary like core business next to desktop as a service is like providing those core ingredients for hosting and managing an enterprise environment. Um, when people set up these on-premise systems and public cloud, and we're kind of like that like sweet spot in the middle, and I think that a multi-cloud strategy is important, right? Put the workload where it belongs,
Yep.
and being able to fail over. Like so many people are like, "Oh yeah, I'm in, I'm using O365. Oh yeah, well, can you go back more than 14 days? Like, do you have a backup of your mailbox? Or how about Susie Bad Girl who like left your company 6 months ago with all your data? Can you get her mailbox? Like, nope. I don't have that. I don't have anything.
Yeah.
So there's like this assumption that Microsoft and Amazon are like they're taking care of things, and really they're just ensuring that that console loads up where you can manage your own servers. And part of the niche that we do at UBX Cloud is provide that infrastructure for. It's a platform, right? It's not just like, hey, we're just not servers for rent. We're experts that come with the servers, and we care about your data, and we care about your cybersecurity, and we care about Susie ransacking all your data and making a ton of money off your business. Um, and so many people are like, "Oh, well, I take snapshots of all my VMs." I'm like, "Dude, snapshots on a backup, that's not going to help you, right?" So our business has evolved. I mean, as the like I said, we make backups cool. That was like one of the things that I
I
mentioned
don't I
earlier.
don't buy it.
All right. Um,
I don't buy it. You got to elaborate on that.
I'll elaborate. So, uh, one of our core deliverables uh, is backup as a service using Veeam technologies. So, UBX Cloud was like one of the first Veeam service providers. We were the first six that built the service provider infrastructure for their product and actually knocked those Russians in the back of their heads and said, "Okay, fix this, move that, change that, expand that. Can't do that. Can't run SMB over the public internet." Um, you know, get these things up and running, and we were able to extend the software into our service provider environment and provide really cool services along with that. So anyone on the planet who's using Veeam software right now can hook into our backup as a service, our service provider cloud, and do some really cool things that that's not even really known, right? I mean, it's not just sending us your backups, but you can log into the console and type in three pieces of information, and all of a sudden your data is protected. And you've got experts on our side that are there to care and feed that data and check that data and make sure it's healthy and the chains are healthy. And we were like fanatics. We're like, okay, we got 15 virtual machines here. Are these still a part of are these still in production? Right? Are these still valid for recovery? Are we missing any VMs? Are we missing any physical servers? Do you have like some old mainframe in the background that no one knows about? These are the kind of stuff that we do, these like Columbo type investigations when it comes to customers' environments, and we make sure that we're grabbing that data on premise and public cloud anywhere, mailbox data, and we're keeping it and we're managing it. And as our relationships have grown and the technologies have grown, our expertise has grown along with it. Like, we used to just sell our service as a consumption service to managed service providers, where we're just saying, here's your offsite repository, send us your data. Now we're like, okay, well, we're taking a look and saying, okay, well, your vCenter environment's not healthy, or your DNS isn't healthy, or this zone isn't working properly, or you've got some problems here. So we are more proactive in the sense that we would fix these things because we ended up being more specialized in these areas than they were. And over time, we just started incorporating those kinds of those additions into our service, and just still charging the per terabyte model that we do right now. So, if you're buying a terabyte of backup for us for your Veeam environment, you're going to get our expertise to help you with it. Like, not only on the actual making sure that your stuff works locally or in your other multi-cloud environment, but to actually assist you when there's a recovery. And we need to recover that Exchange server, or recover that Active Directory server, when you've got people on the other end of that recovery not understanding how any of that stuff works, right? So we're there to help you. During the Hafnium incident, we had 60 plus Microsoft Exchange servers get hacked. Our MSP partners were freaking out and they were calling us. So Microsoft had an exploit, and they were the threat actors were encrypting. Not only were they encrypting the Exchange servers, but they were leaving backdoors in all the lateral servers in the environment. And we have a large customer base. Even back then, it was 200 plus MSPs, and all of a sudden, you never anticipate that many of your customers are going to be calling you. Especially when you're running a business like ours, where it's like, hey, we might do 2 or 3 DR tests a month, or recoveries, and all of a sudden, everyone's calling us all at the same time. What's going on? And on the Hafnium side, we had to do surgery on these Exchange servers for so many of these customers. So we had to surgically remove the databases, and then reinstate a backup from whenever the infiltration happened in their environment, and then we would stitch them back together and then recover them. So when I say that we make backups cool, I mean we're like a cloud hospital, and we're having to perform surgery on whatever patient walks in, and we're using their backup data as the base of all the things that we're doing. And it was nuts. I mean, I lost a ton of hair during that period. I was like chunks of my hair were falling out, and our whole team was overworked, but we saved a ton. Saved a ton of customers. And there's always these major cybersecurity incidences that we get involved in, and all of a sudden we're the only person in the room that can handle it, because of our expertise on kind of managing some of these critical systems. Large municipality goes offline, right? Public services out, police out, fire, EMS, everything out, and then we get the call, right? They're just a backup or a DR customer of ours, and then all of a sudden we the incident response team is like, hey, you guys are pretty good, and this, move this stuff here, take care of this, take care of that. And we come in and we basically do all the, it's like coal mine, right? It's like working in a coal mine. It's really hard, arduous work, but because UBX spends a lot of its time moving these environments, from on-premise to our private cloud, or from public cloud to our private cloud, or vice versa, we have experience in lifting and shifting all these enterprise systems, that people just, you may work at a company for 20 years and know your software, but do you know how to move it from one site to another? Right? And you may have 50, 60 applications and data all over the planet. So that's kind of where we're specialized heavily in this area. And we've done some really cool stuff and made backups cool. We've actually used Veeam as a way. There was a bare metal cloud provider. They had about 150,000 servers, and they gave their customers 16 days to evacuate their data. Yeah, they went chapter 7. There was no renegotiation of their debt or anything. It was just we're done, we're out. So we said, okay, we had a process in place for intaking all those customers, and then they had 16 days to get their data out of their environment. So we migrated terabytes of data from failing storage fabrics, right? the company literally like just closed, right? So there was like the managers all said, everyone go home, you're all fired, we're closing our doors. And we sent notice to all of our customers. They had some like cobbled together software defined storage platform that needed to be managed because it was like an in-house solution. And the storage fabric of this environment was like falling apart. Like LUNs were like going into read-only mode and then crashing, and customers vCenter's environment were like failing, and we had people, you know, trying to like hit my whole business is here, like get this out of here, right? And we used Veeam exclusively to lift and shift all these environments, and we even did like physical to virtual conversions over the cloud on the fly. So we would like did a physical to virtual conversion while we were actually ingesting the data into our cloud repositories and then restoring them. It was just nuts. It was 16 days of just crazy. And by the time we were done, it was like we didn't have a single bit of lost data, not one
Jeez.
gigabyte of lost data. We had one that actually, when it was all over, we had one that the virtual machine name was like there was two iterations of the VM, and like one had like an underscore at the end of the name, right?
Mm.
And the guy's like, I need the one with the underscore, right? And I'm like, I got it right here, right? Like it was nuts. We were moving blade servers and Cisco UCS chassis from one data center to another to account for the capacity that we were onboarding so fast.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was with a Top Gun of cloud, man.
All right. So
It was crazy.
I said it was BS. I rescind that statement. You made backup 99% cool. I'll give you that stamp of approval. No,
Right.
that was always, I was always around backup, but I never was immersed in it. I always did other things. I was I worked for Cisco. You know what I mean? I sold blade servers. You know what I mean? We never sold storage. But no,
We love our Cisco UCS.
it's a great story. See, they had a rough couple years, and then they righted the ship. They had there a couple of them where the first couple of years when they launched it was rough.
Yeah, we got in with Pure Storage and Cisco, and we set up their FlashStack platform before they had a FlashStack platform, like before they validated it. We were actually Pure Storage's first customer when they were only like 5 or 6 people there.
Jeez.
And we needed something fast and performant for our VDIs, for our desktop as a service, because all the EMC and HP stuff that we were using was just not able to handle it at all.
They built an absolute religion. It's very difficult in this business to Cisco did it. I think Pure did it. There's a few companies that have done it where they're just the users of it just are will fight to the death. I've never the Pure people are as they're about as dedicated to that product as I've ever seen.
I mean, we've had 100% uptime since we moved our storage fabric to Pure. I mean, seriously, it's been amazing. It's not cheap.
Yeah, knock on wood. Don't ever say that out loud to anyone else besides. Just say it on a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's been. I mean, we have their FlashStack pods all over the planet. And it's like we've looked at it. When they went public, it was a little shaky, and but we still. We still like kind of had our faith in them, and it's been a very fruitful relationship.
That was a great conversation I had at a networking event. He's like, "Yeah, I work in this data center. We got 100% uptime." I'm like, "What have you been? Have you been open for 2 hours? Like, who talked?"
Well, I like to say, like, on the infrastructure, right?
I know. I'm just
on the app side, it's like, no way. It's not going to happen.
No, I'm just messing with you. And then I had to get into the gaming side. If you've been around as long as me, I told you there's 2 games that I will still play. I'll play to the end of time, which is Age of Empires and Diablo. And I did not pull the trigger on Diablo 4. It's $119, and it's on the Xbox, which I feel like you got to buy it on the PC or don't do it at all. Have you gotten into the new one, or are you still on Diablo 2?
I downloaded it. I played it for like 2 seconds, and then my kid started crying or something, so I had to stop what I was doing. But I've been a diehard Diablo 2 fan since it came out. Well, actually, all the Diablos, but that was my favorite. And D2 Resurrected is incredible. I almost didn't graduate college because of Diablo, because I would like skip school and like play that game all the time. So
I'll never forget my father just standing over me screaming in half German, half English. Because I think I was on like a 8-9 hour just head down into
Session,
a laptop, back all hunched over. I'm amazed I don't have back problems. Playing Diablo 2. Then you know what happens is you hold off, and then you finally get the cheat codes, and then it ruins the game, and then you can never play it the same again. Age of Empires, I need to start. I don't even play it clean anymore. It's got to be. I start with.
I don't play it clean anymore.
I know. I don't have the time for it. You know.
Is it still Microsoft? Because it was Microsoft when I played it. It was their product.
I think it still is. Age of Empires. Yeah, it still is. Or I don't. To be honest, I don't know. I'll have to look. But hey, it's super cool story. I'm shocked we've never met up for a beer all this time that we've basically been working next door to each other, kind of in tandem in the same industry. But I look forward to getting together with you now that we know each other. But appreciate you hanging out with us. Steve Panovski, CEO, UBX Cloud. Check them out. Definitely super cool story, super cool company. We're going to wrap things up for this episode of the IT and the D Show. On behalf of Bob and Sick Randy, do us all a favor. Drink up your drinks, get your phone numbers. You don't got to go home. You just got to get the hell out of here. See you next week. Drive careful. Beat it.